Hello, I'm Luke Patterson. Welcome to The Journey. Today's guest is Randall Davis. He's been a legendary developer in the Houston market for a very long time. He started out in multifamily, ultimately did historical and iconic buildings like the Rice Hotel and Lofts, Hotel Icon, just to name a few. And ultimately now he has spent lots of time in the luxury high-rise space. And he's also done many beautiful buildings there, Gotham, Manhattan, London House, Arabella, just to name a few. You're going to enjoy today's show. Great stories of his iconic journey and even some of his failures. Randall, thank you for joining us. You have been, I would say, characterized a wildly successful developer over the years. How did you become a developer? I mean, there's lots of things and stories we get to hear on our program about entrepreneurs, business owners. How did you become a developer?
I ended up getting a job in real estate right out of college with an apartment developer.
Okay.
I was hired as summer help, and I outworked his vacancy problem and then got promoted to a property manager for the company, and a couple years later became a partner.
Okay. So you just worked hard, got sort of into the business right away. This is the multifamily space.
Multifamily,
And did you do any development of multifamily, or did you just...
Yeah, we did probably about 4,000 units.
Okay.
They were very successful. My head partner, because I was the minority partner, he didn't believe in A-plus locations, so we didn't make as much money as we should have. He liked to buy sites that were less expensive, so we could have done better, but we didn't, and everything went well for a long time. We had several thousand apartments we developed, and then I ran the largest management company in Houston. I operated about 12,000 units.
Wow.
About 4,000 we owned and about 8,000 we managed, and that was me on roller skates, eating lunch in my car every day for a couple of years.
Yeah. What did you think about risk during that time? I remember, obviously, you're quite a younger guy. Did risk come into it as a factor for you in terms of development? Or is it just, hey, this is what I'm meant to do, I'm going to go do it?
Well, you know, when we started, there really wasn't much risk. I mean, times were really good.
Yeah.
And I mean, if you built it, they would come. And so we were putting them up as fast as we could and as fast as we could get financing. And back then, you know, whatever that was, 90s, whatever, everything went according to plan.
Yeah.
Until the oil companies went boom and everything turned around and went the other way.
Right, right.
And so we had all these apartments that were cash flowing, some hotels that were cash flowing, and some valuable land. I had a big financial statement. I was married, was doing just fine, came from Beaumont, came from nowhere, came from nothing, worked my way up. And everything was fine for a period of about 10 years.
Well, then what happened?
The market went away, and all the apartments that were cash flowing turned around and went negative. And when they go negative, that means you have to write your check for your percentage of the cash call. And so I went through a divorce and not brilliantly, gave my ex-wife the house and the cash, and I kept the real estate.
Oh.
But the real estate stayed in the shitter for an extended period of time, and within less than a year, I had gone from fairly good amount of cash and a sizable financial statement into Chapter 7.
Wow.
Couldn't pay my light bill, didn't have a dime.
Thanks for sharing that, because I think sometimes people see or know people that know you, Randall Davis here in town especially, know all the beautiful places you've built, and we'll get to all that. But it's I think it's very real for people to understand that it's a little bumpy at times.
It was bumpy, yeah.
So tell me about that experience, and how did it perhaps change you from a business perspective? Did it change anything, or things that maybe you have focused on in a way that you just had not done before? Did it fundamentally change you in any way, whether it be personally, how you thought about business, or otherwise?
I don't think it fundamentally changed. I mean, it was just really hard to start with nothing, and then like I used to come home and tell my father, look, I'm worth $11 million. I got $1 million in cash, and I got $10 million in real estate assets. And he says to me, you mean you're worth $1 million?
Yeah.
And he was right.
Yeah.
Because all the real estate went to nothing.
Yeah.
And so to start over was difficult. But, you know, I've always been focused, and so I turned around and decided that I would start over, borrowed $75,000 from 3 friends, opened an office, started a management company again on my own, a small one, got a guy that I know to buy a couple apartment projects back when they were giving them away because times were tough. And so now I had management fee income, and then I did fire repairs, I did reconstruction, I did whatever I could do to make money in my small office, which was just me and a receptionist.
So you were looking for opportunities, you were raising capital, you were trying to ultimately either do the project, you were kind of doing the project yourself. And you've kind of always operated this way, right? I mean, my understanding is you never sort of built, sort of didn't have the need to have this large organization. You largely manage it, run it, and make all the decisions and basically all your projects.
Yeah, pretty much. But I mean, in the days when I had the apartments, I mean, I had 200 employees and like 6 property supervisors who worked for me, and I was totally anal, had to approve every bill. And so, I'd been through all of that, and I wanted to do something where I had more control and where it was just relied more on me than these other people, and I didn't want all these busy work. So I had to go and find something else. So in the management business, I was making a little bit of money, but I knew in order to make any money at all, I would have to get back somehow to develop. So I tried some guys from Boston who were younger guys who were well-heeled, but between their financial statement, which was mediocre at best, and mine, which was absolutely weak, I couldn't borrow any money to build an apartment project. In fact, I was looking at one on North Boulevard, and if anybody knows about anything about Houston, building an apartment on North Boulevard would be gold. Couldn't get the money. So I had to figure out something else.
So what did you do? Did you get the money at all, or were not? Just had to pass?
What I did was something most people won't do, but I've never been afraid of risk, always loved to gamble. A friend of mine who I knew for a long time told me about an apartment project for sale in Galveston. And so it was a converted hospital into residential, and he said it was a great-looking building and a great deal. Bank was selling it very cheap. I looked at the pictures. I got in my car, drove down there. I said, I love it. He said, what are you going to do? I said, well, I'm going to buy it. He said, what are you going to do to pay for it? I said, I'm going to figure it out. So they asked me to put up $150,000 earnest money. I had $175,000 in the bank. So I put the money up. And so they offered me financing with like $1 million down and a $3 million note. So all I needed to do was raise $1 million. About 2 weeks before my earnest money went hard, they called me and they said, look, we've made that deal, but we really don't want to do that deal. We'll sell you the building for less, but it's all cash. So I think it was $4.5 million. I got the numbers wrong, and then they'd sell it to me for $4 million cash. And if you're not going to pay cash, we don't want to do the deal. So now I had a choice. I could get my earnest money back, or I could go figure out how to raise $4 million when I couldn't raise one. So what did I do? I said, no problem. I let my earnest money go hard.
Okay.
So I'm supposed to pay $4 million cash in 60 days, and I've got $25,000 in the bank plus the $150. And so I just put my head down and tried to figure out anybody I could think of that was buying apartments where I could flip my position. And I landed on a guy that I knew casually who had received some financing from GE Capital. He stepped into my shoes. I made a brokerage fee. He bought the property. He loved the property. In fact, 18 months later, I sold it for him again, and I made a brokerage fee twice on this property. But I let it all roll. I went broke. I got some money back, but I let it all roll.
Okay.
And so then I had some money in the bank to do something.
Wow, that's a great story. So then I know you made a transition. I consider your career, from what you've explained to me, kind of have a few phases to it. You kind of had the multifamily phase. This was your first phase right out of school. You spent some years doing that, developing and managing multifamily. And then you went to this, I'll call it sort of the historical projects. And so I want to talk about that, particularly people in Houston that know these are noteworthy projects, and people that, I was married in one of the hotels that you did, and the Rice Hotel, which is a beautiful place. And you gave me some great backstory on that when we met last week. But tell us about that experience and how you evolved into that.
I was in Portland, Oregon, and my parents were from Portland, and I saw a conversion of a historic building into lofts. I had heard about them, but I came back to Houston, determined, well, there's a hole in the market. There's nobody taking historic buildings and converting them to residential. However, the glitch was the only historic buildings of any consequence were downtown. And downtown was as dead as it could be. Bums in the street, no restaurants, no bars, no art galleries, nobody living there. But I decided I would try it anyway, so I drove through downtown looking for a building, and one day I drove by what was called the Butte Paint Factory, which happened to be the longest running business in the city of Houston. And I saw this guy up front, and it was a beautiful red brick building, not too big, and I asked if it was for sale. He said, no, my paint company, we've been here forever. And he said, I'm struggling with my bank. I said, what does that mean? He said, I owe them a lot of money, but I'm not paying them. And so I asked him the salient question, which bank do you own? Yeah. Which bank do you owe money to? And he gave me the name of the bank. So I turned around in my car and I drove down to the bank and asked them if they would like to sell me the building since he was delinquent. And the bank agreed to sell me a 125,000 square foot building for, I think it was $1 million, wow, which was $8 a foot.
Wow.
And so they also made an agreement with me because they had a dispute with him that I would not go in the building. So I had to buy the building sight unseen.
Okay.
I honored that. I didn't go in. I should have, but I didn't.
Okay.
So once again, a bank changes their mind, and they tell me right before closing, and I had acquired a partner then, Dick Weekly, very well-known gentleman. He and his brother own Weekly Homes. Great guy, done a lot of great things for the state of Texas. Couldn't be a more upstanding person. And he and I had agreed to be partners because what I told him was nobody's home in downtown, and it resonated with him. Nobody's home, well, we should be doing something in downtown. So the bank called me up and said, look, we don't want to be in the chain of title. We're going to foreclose. We'll sell you the building for $1 a foot. That's $1 a foot, 125,000 square foot building. Wow. You go to the courthouse, you bring a cashier's check for $125,000. You can bid it in at that. Nobody else is going to bid, and you can have it. Wow. They didn't want to be in the chain of title. I did that. Brought the check, bought the building for $1 a foot.
So then you developed this, I'm assuming, and then how did all that go?
Like a triple nightmare.
Oh, no.
I thought I had gone bankrupt again.
Oh, no.
Walked in the paint factory. There had at least 6 inches to 8 inches of paint sludge on top of wood floors on every floor. There were all these barrels that said hazardous waste.
Oh.
And they had told me that there was underground leaking storage tanks, but they didn't tell me how bad it was. And they also didn't tell me the building was full of asbestos.
Oh, no.
So now I had a building with asbestos, underground leaking storage tanks, and hazardous waste. And I didn't know anything about environmental.
Yeah.
And so I called my partner. He said, you know, you're going to have to outwork the problem you got me in there. So that night I'll never forget, I went home. I was so depressed thinking, you know, I'm going to lose all my money again. I woke up in the morning, I'm shaving, I look at the TV, and there's a building on fire in the warehouse district. And I went, I forgot to buy insurance. I didn't buy any insurance.
Oh, wow.
I didn't have any insurance. So I thought, here we go.
Yeah.
This building's gone.
Yeah.
But it wasn't my building, fortunately.
Yeah.
So I started off with a heart attack in the morning, got over that. Go back down there, pick up the phone and call the lady's name who's on the tags of all these hazardous waste. And I told her, I bought the Butte Paint Factory. I'm going to convert it to a residential facility. What do I do with its drums? And she said, have you lost your mind? Are you insane? Are you insane? There's hazardous waste. It's a paint factory. How are you going to disassemble a 100-year-old paint factory? How are you going to cure the underground leaking storage tanks? Yeah. I said, I don't know, but I'm going to figure it out.
Yeah. So
I did figure it out. Back then, and I called everybody that I was listed back then. This wasn't online. It was in the Yellow Pages. I got like 10 people to come out and bid on removing the asbestos, and the bids were $40,000 to $400,000.
Oh, my God.
I took the $40,000. Had bids to remove the paint factory. They ranged from $60,000 to $500,000. I took the $60,000 bid. I got all the paint factory out of there. Then I had the drums to get rid of, but nobody wants hazardous waste. And I'm thinking, I've got these 30 drums of hazardous waste. I've got about 30 drums of chemicals that haven't been opened. Who could use that? Mm-hmm. So I looked online, or Yellow Pages, if you will, and found a paint factory. I called up the owner of the paint factory. I said, look, do you use blah, 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 blah chemicals? He said, yeah, we use that to make paint. I said, would you like 25 or 30 barrels? He said, yes, you giving them away? I said, here's what I'm going to do. You come over and you get the 30 barrels, 40 barrels, whatever, of the good chemicals, and you take my 30 barrels of hazardous waste. I'll throw in a leather couch and a color TV, which I've got in this office. Drive your truck over here tomorrow, and I'll make the deal. And he did it.
Wow.
So I got rid of all the hazardous waste. It cost me a leather couch and a color TV.
Wow.
So I got rid of the hazardous waste. So now all I had left was underground leaking storage tanks, which was going to be a big number.
Yeah.
But I got a little lucky there in that they assigned me a guy that knew a guy, and so they had to come out and take a look and see what was in the tanks. And the guy stuck a stick down there, and he said, smells like an oil component to me. We'll take the tanks out for free. So instead of me spending $1 million to $1.5 million getting all the chemicals and getting all of the hazardous waste and everything out of the building, I spent like $300,000 or $400,000.
Oh my gosh.
So now I was ready to develop.
So you did, I'm assuming.
I did. All the banks turned me down.
Okay.
No one wanted to make a loan.
Construction loan on this.
No one wanted a loan. So I said, well, nobody will make me a loan. I'll prove you wrong. So I built out a unit.
All right.
And I pre-leased almost the whole building.
Wow.
And then with Dick Weekly as partner, we went to Southwest Bank of Texas, a guy named Walter Johnson, and he believed, of course he believed in Dick Weekly, but he knew I could work.
Yeah.
So he made us a loan. So I got to do the Dakota Lofts, which is the first loft building in Houston.
Well, I was around at that time. I grew up in this area, and then, of course, I got to see, not that one specifically, I don't recall, but definitely the idea of this loft lifestyle in Houston about the time that was all coming. And that's all sort of born from your idea and overcoming a lot of obstacles to do it. And so you did some others.
I did Tribeca, which was a printing factory, which I still own an office in.
Okay.
I did the Hog Palace. I paid $10 a foot for that building. I talked to a guy in Transamerica. He liked me in San Francisco. He had other bidders, but somehow I convinced him to sell it to me. I've since sold the building. And then I did the Rice Hotel, and I also did the Strand Lofts in Galveston, which was a mistake. And so those are the buildings that I did, and the Rice being the most well-known building, and actually not patting myself on the back, but it's a pretty well-known fact that the mayor partnered with me on that with the city, and that was the catalyst for downtown coming back. Restaurants followed, art galleries followed, because then everybody believed that this giant 750,000 square foot building that housed retail and residential, downtown was back.
And it wasn't before that, to be clear.
No.
For our listeners, the people that may not know, Houston was, in fact, sort of downtown was kind of dead, if you will. Didn't have any of the things that you would normally associate with sort of urban living.
I mean, look, it wasn't easy. As I told you before, a lot of stumbles. The city was going to be my partner. Then right before, 10 lawyers in the room and just me, 10 on their side, me on my side, they sold their position to a REIT in Dallas, and all of a sudden became partners with a REIT in Dallas, who retained the right to buy me out based upon a formula of construction budget to actual and rent pro forma to actual. And I did just fine there. I never wanted to sell, but they did write me a big check at the end. But as I told you, it was a struggle, because a big component of what I had done was involved with historic tax credits. Mm-hmm. And you have to get those approved, and you have to get your plan approved. Long story short, as I think I told you, I got my plan approved by the Texas Historic Commission, which usually means you're done. Mm-hmm. You get your tax credits, and in this case it was $5 million worth of tax credits, which you could sell for $4 million at that time, which went into the pot of money on the valuation of the building. Mm-hmm. But the U.S. Historic Commission denied my tax credits because they didn't want all of the plaster stripped off the walls, and they didn't want exposed brick anymore, which was being done in other cities. But they had determined they didn't want that anymore.
So you had to go to D.C. a few times to try to find out what you could do. That's a lot of money. That's real money where I come from anyway. And so you had to convince them, and ultimately they asked you to do a couple of things, and you did it. And then tell us about that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I got turned down on tax credits, and I said I want to appeal. And they said, we don't have an appeal process. I said, I want to appeal anyway. And they said, no. I said, yes. And finally, they said, okay, you can come up here but you're not going to win the appeal. So I went up there to appeal, and I lost. And after I lost, I said, I want to appeal again. And they said, we told you there's no appeal. And I said, well, I'm going to bring the people from the Texas Historic Commission to testify that I had agreed that I would take the plaster off the wall, expose a brick, which people would like as far to their living space, in exchange for me restoring the Rice Ballroom, because at one time it was the center of the universe for Houston, and the Historic Commission wanted to bring it back. And it was $1 million I didn't have, but I found a way to get it in my budget, so I agreed with the Historic Commission. They came with me to Washington, D.C., and told them all the things I'd agreed to do, and Washington, D.C. said, no, you don't get the tax credits. And so now I had been 3 times. One time's all you get to go.
Yeah.
And so I racked my brain for weeks and remembered a guy that I had run into a long time ago who had now become, I think, a state representative. I called him to see if he could offer any advice, and he knew the head of whatever the Historic Commission was. And so he got me an audience, at least a verbal audience, and the guy made a deal with me. He would allow half the units to have brick walls and half the units I had to drywall. And so for that, he would give me my tax credits.
Okay. So you did
after just horrible perseverance, it happened.
Well, that's certainly one of the things that I see with you is you have had to overcome a lot of obstacles to get to the point we are today. I mean, now they're like very vivid memories for you, and hopefully you get a lot of satisfaction in the fact that you had this perseverance and you just said creative in some unusual ways, but found a way to get it done. And of course, you just said you were not necessarily you kind of like to bet, but you're betting on yourself, right? I mean, the risk for you was betting on myself. I'm willing to do it, and clearly it worked out for you.
Yeah, well, I would prefer much more not to have had those nightmares.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Much more not to have those obstacles. But what it teaches you is no means nothing.
Yeah.
Now, if you're taking no for answers, you need to go sit on a rocking chair out in the country. No doesn't mean a damn thing. No just means ask somebody else.
I love that.
Right.
That's a great takeaway.
Go to plan B, plan C.
Find a way, and that's what you've done. But you've done a few things now. This is the third phase, I'll call it. I think you kind of shared that with me a little bit. Is that getting the luxury the luxury living space, or the mid-rise world? Is that kind of the third area that you would call it?
Yeah. But downtown I also did a hotel Icon.
Icon, that's right.
Right, started with a dead man in the safe.
Okay.
That's how we started the project. Found a dead guy in the safe.
Had no idea who it was, or didn't care, or what?
No, well, of course I cared. I mean, there's a dead guy in your safe.
Yeah.
We had to have him removed, but he was some homeless person who had wandered in there, and evidently somebody didn't like him and closed the door.
Oh, no.
So
that was a bad way to go.
Yeah, that was a bad way to go. So Hotel Icon was in a bank building. Like the Rice, it had been abandoned for 20 years, and I turned it into my version of a Paris hotel. It was a wonderful building when I did it.
Yeah.
But we had poor management.
I see. Well, I do want to talk about this a little bit because it gets into sort of this other phase as you round out the historical buildings, I guess, and those things that you had come to do and do well, and especially in Houston. But you kind of got into this luxury mid-rise space now, and they're all different. And they're all beautifully designed. I mean, people can go to your website, of course, and see these buildings that you've done. They're pretty spectacular. I think any of us would be proud to live in any of them. What was kind of your inspiration did you like design, or is that something that also inspired you about development that appealed to you? Tell us about how you do that in your process.
Well, when you did apartments, or back when I was doing them, and I don't think it's that much difference today, you did what everybody else was doing. So it didn't allow for a lot of creativity. Truth be known, I should have never got out of the apartment business. I would be much, much better off, because it's a much better business model than high-rise condominiums. And like I said, even when I was doing historic buildings, I did a number of them, but I was doing one at a time, and the people that were making more money than me were the people that were buying vacant buildings around me and waiting for me to increase the value. And then I compounded that mistake with falling in love with an 1860s building in Galveston. Spent over a year redoing that one, and all I needed to do was do anything in Houston, and I would have made 5 times the money.
Right.
But I fell in love with this old building in Galveston. So yes, I loved design and I loved historic buildings. And so the offshoot of apartments and the offshoot of lofts was high-rise living. But there wasn't any in Houston. Nothing had been built in 30 years. And so I couldn't buy any more buildings in downtown Houston because people that knew me or knew what I was doing, or simply other real estate developers, were buying the buildings in downtown and trying to figure out how to develop them. They drove the prices up so much that it would be very difficult to develop them and make money.
I see.
So I sort of abandoned that. I mean, it was no different than the cycle in any other large or mid-sized city. When they get in there and they start buying the historic buildings, the buildings around them increase in value.
Yeah.
And so I made the mistake, which I didn't realize at the time, was I should have done one, bought three, and just sat. Because the three that I would have bought be worth 5 times more than the one I completed.
Right.
And so I ended up being the worker that created value for other people. I don't resent that. I just think I was stupid. I should have just done something different. I should have contracted to buy more buildings.
Right.
But I didn't. And so I got out of the historic renovation business.
Well,
I couldn't find any others to do.
You tell us some about the first ones that you did. How did you do it? How did you structure it? How did you raise capital? All those things. Tell us about the deal itself a little bit.
Well, it happened that I was referred by an attorney friend of mine to a gentleman from England who had sold an apartment project in Houston, and he got it back. And so the lawyer referred me to him. I took his project, fixed it up for him, and sold it for him, and he made really good money. And he was a real estate investor with an international experience. He had developed condominiums, high-rises in Australia and in England, but he was a little bit older, but he liked to invest, and he liked to back somebody. So he and I started talking, and I said, look, the one hole in the market I see is there's no high-rise condominiums. And I said, I have a list of people from my lofts that have said they wanted to buy if I ever built a loft condominium. He said, how long is the list? I said, like 85 people. He said, well, you know what? We might be able to do that. So he agreed to be my partner. I contracted to buy a tract of land I couldn't afford right next to the post office on West Gray. The seller was a great gentleman from Detroit who gave me time, which is what I needed. And so what I arranged was this big party for these 80 people, of which about 40 or 45 people showed up. And then I announced my first, we'll call it mid-rise, high-rise, called Metropolis, right there on West Gray. And it was a small project, only like 36 units, 20-foot ceilings. Nobody done that. The units for sale. I needed a pre-sale. I put gargoyles on top. Everybody said, why would you do that? Are you crazy? I went, no. That's what they do on historic buildings. They put gargoyles on top. So I found a guy in Dallas who sculpted them, and so he gave me the drawings, and so that's what I was selling visually, this project with 36 units. So I brought the people in for a party, and there was about 45 people. And how many people would you guess signed up to buy in the building? How many would you guess? Let's take a guess.
I think if we got half of them, you'd be hitting it out of the park.
You are not even close.
No. Okay.
One.
Oh my gosh. Oh.
One. Everybody was full of shit.
Yeah.
So I had one buyer who I gave the deal of a lifetime.
Okay.
And that's how I started. And so I put a sales trailer on the site. The seller gave me more time, and I tried to pre-sell this dream, this 36-unit building that looked more like a Chicago warehouse with gargoyles on top. And people came and bought my units.
Okay. So you did pre-sale ultimately, just not at that party.
No, I did pre-sales, which allowed me to be able to get a bank loan because, first of all, banks weren't loaning on high-rise condominiums. It's, it's totally out of favor. Nobody's doing it. And so I had to prove the market. So, we wrote risk capital, maybe $500,000 between the two of us, and did the pre-sales, paid the marketing costs, the architectural, et cetera, got it going, and sold the building out, Metropolis.
Wow. Well, that had to feel pretty good.
it felt great.
Yeah.
At that time, we thought we made a lot of money. By today's standards, it was bupkis.
Well, let me ask you this, so to go back for just a second. You know, people have this journey as an entrepreneur and business owner. Sometimes it's hard to get people to explain to us some of their bumpy times or their failures. You've been generous enough to kind of explain those to us right away. When did you feel like, okay, I think I'm, beginning to kind of get airborne on this. I'm feeling like this is becoming successful. I'm not worried about, or maybe not as worried about, my next deal or my next project. Did you feel like at that point you had the reputation, credibility, experience, track record, the things that you needed to pull together to be successful in this business at that point at least?
Well, I mean, I had a little notoriety from what I'd done downtown, and especially the Rice Hotel. So that gave me credibility, and I think, somewhat well-deserved.
Sure.
And then when I finished the first building, I went looking for a site immediately to build a second condominium project. My partner's like, let's go. And so I found a site for the Gotham, which is on Shepherd. So I used the design of the Credit Lyonnais, if that's how you say it, bank in Paris, and put a pediment on top and some sculptures, and tried to do this really historic-looking building that would be European in nature, and once again, lofts, 20-foot ceilings.
There was nothing
great
like
spaces.
it in town.
No.
Nothing like this.
No.
Yeah.
You couldn't buy a new, we'll call it regular high-rise condo, and I'm the only one doing it, so if you want it, you can buy my loft condominium.
Yeah.
And back then, I was selling for, maybe $170 a foot, and today it costs $600 a foot to build the same thing. Mm-hmm. But I was making money, and my partner was making money, and it was fun to create that space. The building had great views of River Oaks right across the street, and out the east side, it had great views of downtown. So it sold out pretty quickly.
And this was, 25 years ago or so, maybe?
No, 17, 18
years ago.
Something like that.
So what
15,
what was the price range of maybe the bottom floor or the penthouse?
They ranged, they were in the $300,000 range.
Okay.
And you got a lot of space for that.
Yeah.
I mean, you got almost 3,000 feet.
Wow.
So,
And it was a great building.
It was a great
building.
It's a great building. It's still a great building today.
Yeah.
I mean, it sits right on Shepherd, right on the curve. And
so you ended up selling that building?
No, I sold it out.
Okay.
Because I don't own them. So
right.
once you sell them out, you're gone.
Yeah.
You take your money and go. But again, condominiums are not the best business model because I pay ordinary income instead of capital gain. Mm-hmm. So by math, I have to make 1/3 more than the apartment developer to keep the same amount of money.
Understood.
Hence, you don't have anybody dumb enough to go build high-rise condominiums because A, it's difficult, B, there's a lot of risk, and C, there's a tax implication that's not favorable.
Interesting. Well, nonetheless, you've built a long list of some of these high-rise luxury living spaces, and some of them, it's still more and more. What do you still like this business? Are you still developing? I know you're considering doing another project in this business, and do you still sort of the future is bright, even in Houston or maybe even other areas for this?
Well, I followed Metropolis and Gotham was Renoir next door, and Renoir land was a sale of land governed by the city in a tent.
Okay.
That's back when things were simple, and it was actually an auction where you raised your hand to buy the land.
Wow.
And so I went to that auction, and I let everybody bid. When it got down to 2 bidders, then I just overbid them and got the land and built Renoir, which looks to me like it came off the streets of Paris. Mm-hmm. I think it's a great historical depiction of what's in Paris, and the units turned out fantastic. Renoir was very, very successful.
Was there anything intuitive, for you? Because to come to a place like Houston, never been done before, and then really making a large bet that people were going to be receptive and want to buy and spend real money on the condominiums that are unlike, and again, anything we could see here, but are in nice certain other parts of the world. Did you just feel like this is something that'll work?
I always feel like, I wasn't building a lot of units. I only need a few people that see my vision.
Yeah.
I'm aware that some people might say that it's crazy or it doesn't fit or what the hell you doing. But I can't worry about that.
Yeah.
I just need people that share my vision that these are beautiful buildings that have pride of architecture and it's a place you want to live.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what I did with Renoir, and I followed it with 2 projects in partners with Heinz across from the water wall, the Manhattan and the Empire, both New York names, both New York looks.
And bigger projects, were a
Yeah, a
little
bigger
larger.
projects.
At least they
Yeah,
appear to
yeah,
be
almost,
anyway.
Yeah, almost 100 units
Okay,
each,
yeah.
which is not huge, but Houston standards, it was huge. And so they did very well, and they sold out also.
Okay.
So I just kept going.
And then so what? Arabella, is this kind of one of your last?
Oh no, that's most recent.
Yeah.
After that, I made the very, very unfortunate mistake of falling in love with the beach.
Okay, this is right. So anyway, back to this is Galveston.
Decided to do. My salesman, the lady who ran the sales company that I use, she was just a princess of a woman, just the best. And she told me there was a guy in South Padre that owned the Sheraton Hotel, which was the A-plus site in South Padre, and next door he owned the land. And he was struggling to start a high-rise condominium, and I'd like to go and see if I could help him.
Oh, okay.
Edith Personette was her name. And so I flew down there, met the guy, never seen him before in my life, spent an hour and a half and said, I'll do it. And so it was a $115 million building or $120 million building, and we were struggling to get the equity. However, we got lucky. The land appraisal came in much more than we'd actually paid for the land.
Okay.
So we had the land as equity, and we had some of our cash, and we built the building.
Okay.
And shortly after that, I started one in Galveston called Diamond Beach. Mm-hmm. Both buildings, Sapphire going up, Diamond Beach just starting. The day before I received my certificate of occupancy, the day before Sapphire, the building's 100% completed, they had a hurricane, a small hurricane came through, and the building inspector for the city of South Padre said he's not coming to give me a CO because of the hurricane. It's a small one. It's not a big deal. But the architectural company that designed the building misdesigned vents at the very top. They didn't enclose the room where the vents were in like block. It was just drywall. And in a hurricane, there's high winds at the top.
Yeah.
Blew out the vents, soaked the building from top to bottom. All the cabinets went. All the electrical went. All the elevator went. $25 million in damage in a building that was 205 units sold out of like 215.
Wow.
So also, getting ready to go order an airplane. My airplane went down in that hurricane.
Oh.
So I had to start over again. I lost all the buyers and went back. I lost over half the buyers, had to start over again. 6 weeks later, a hurricane hit Galveston. My building was under construction. It ruined the market for 2 years. So between those 2 buildings and the dispute with the bank, officers being very cooperative, however, the man who owned the majority of the bank being totally uncooperative and totally unfair, held my feet to the fire. And after a legal battle, I wrote a check for millions of dollars and got out of both of those buildings. Instead of making a lot of money, all I did was lose a lot.
Oh, my gosh, Randall.
All because of 2 hurricanes. And there hadn't been a hurricane in Texas for the previous 30 years. 2 came through 6 weeks apart. Neither one were that big. Just both of them went right over the top of both of my buildings. So you could say it's bad luck.
I was going to say, how did you take it? Did you take it, look, I feel like I'm snake bit here, or what?
I took it, but I don't take it like a lot of people. I mean, sometimes I do things because I want to be successful and I'd like to have the money, but I enjoy what I do. And, once you learn that you can make money, then you just put your head down and just start again, And so this stopped me for 18 months where I had this bank battle. And, they had their perspective and I had mine. I don't manufacture hurricanes, and you need to give me more time. And their perspective was keep writing checks, and I'm like, I'm not going broke again.
Right.
I've done that before, so we fought it out. They won, got a lot of money out of me, millions of dollars, and so I had to move on.
So what was your next step?
I think maybe I did Astoria. Started to do one in Dallas with Hines again. We had a pre-sale. It didn't work out. People in Dallas didn't understand pre-sales. They didn't understand having faith in the developer. So all we did was burn $1 million.
Oh, my gosh.
Burned it up and threw it away.
So there's real risk in this real estate development business.
That's why they don't do it. If you're not willing to write a check for $700,000 to $1 million, you're not going to be able to build a condominium and finance it.
Right.
You know, at least in markets around here. I don't know about other cities.
Yeah.
But I went and I built one in Las Vegas. I liked Las Vegas, and I'd gone there a lot. And
you do have a good story on that, right? Because you built it across from what ultimately became the Wynn.
Yes, I found land directly across the street from the Wynn before it was built. That was owned by a Hawaiian partnership. Got along with the guy. He sold me the land. Took my partner from England and another guy, and we became, they put up most of the money. I put up some money. I took all the risk and announced a high-rise in Las Vegas. The reason I did it was there was a company called Turnberry building high-rise condominiums, but they were selling them white boxes, which means you had to go put in your marble and stone and wood floors and sometimes cabinets in these buildings that were 200 or 300 units, which means good luck ever getting an elevator, get your painter up, get your cabinet guy up. Nobody's going to show on time. You got 150 people scrambling. So it was a nightmare for the buyers, but people were rushing to Vegas to buy them. So I said, well, I'll build one. I'll build a loft condominium. I'll give them A+ everything and a finish. So they ran over me to buy my units. And, because I had had this bad experience before and had a conservative mindset, I gave them away. I sold them too cheap.
Wow. Well, you got a call. I want to get this in. You got a call from Steve Wynn.
I did.
Tell our audience about that.
I did. When I had sold about 5 or 6 of the 80 units, I got a call from Steve Wynn, who called me up and said, "You Randall Davis?" "Yes. I want to buy one of your penthouses." "Fantastic, Steve Wynn. What can I do to help you? Would you like to come and look at the floor plan?" "No, I just want the one on the west side." I said, "Well, I've got 3 on the top floor. I got 2. They're all pretty much," "No, you're not listening to me. I only want the one on the west side." "Well, I might have a contract on it. Are you going to sell it to me or not? If not, I'm going to hang up the phone." This is how he talked to me. And I'm like, wow, this is pretty intimidating. And I feel like a peon, and I am compared to him. But, he's talking to me way down low. And I said, "Well, look, let me check." He said, "Well, you call me back." So I called him back after talking to the guy who had bought that penthouse. And I offered the guy who bought the penthouse that he wanted $500,000 to give it back to me. And he wouldn't do it. And God knows why. He didn't have that much money. And there was 2 others that I could have moved him to that weren't any damn different. In fact, one was better. But he wouldn't give it back to me. So I called Steve Wynn back, and I said, "Steve, let's talk about the high-rise." He said, "Well, can you get me that unit?" I said, "Look, you got to talk to me about the one in the middle. It's got a bigger balcony. It's a better unit." And he started yelling at me. "Do you understand? You're not going to sell me anything I don't want. Can I buy that unit? Yes or no? Or I'm going to hang up." Well, I couldn't get the guy out of the contract. Bam.
That was it.
That was it. That was it. Steve Wynn's out. Over now.
Well, it sounds like it was a successful build, and of course you've done more in Houston. What do you think is in store for the next 5 to 10 years for Randall Davis Company? I mean, do you feel like it's still in this luxury space?
I don't look that far ahead.
You don't look that far?
No.
Oh, okay. Project to project.
Yeah. I just try and have as much fun in my life as I can, do as many things, stay active, I do all sorts of things.
Well, what do you do so that you can? What are your daily habits? Things that you do that you would accredit to having the energy and the just the initiative to go about every day and trying to tackle and win and do good projects.
I lift weights 5 days a week. I play tennis 3 days a week, and I occasionally play golf for money.
Okay, so you're active in everything.
I'm traveling as much as I can do, but when I'm in my office, I'm 100% focused, and it's me trying to figure it out.
So what
Along
would
with
you?
a couple other people to help me, including my daughter.
Okay, I know that she's very active in your business.
Yes,
How is that? Can I ask you how working with your daughter?
It's been great. She's very creative, and she has a lot of the traits that I've let go of, which means super anal about what we're designing, and everything has to be perfect. And I've learned to let go of that, because nobody really cares on the 14th floor of the building if you have one window that looks different than the other windows, because somebody wanted to change the color, and she wants it all the same. And I'm like, who knows? Who cares? I mean, you know, you and I will look at it and be upset about it, but nobody else will. But she's still of that philosophy, and she is great at researching and coming up with ideas that enhance the buildings. Wow. She's a marketing person and a creative person.
How long have you been working with her?
15 years.
Wow. So she's been very involved in a lot of these projects. And by the way, if you go to your website, you'll see some of these projects. She's, I'm sure, and with you, have done a beautiful job. Yeah.
She loves to do the design. After she does the design, she's bye-bye, you know, and I'm like, Dad, you go build it.
Well, it's all important. I'm sure it helps people want to buy your units, and still do. So what would you contribute, as I'll say, just kind of wrapping some of these things up, to be most important for you to be successful as a developer? That's a hard business, clearly.
Well, I mean, you know, there's plenty of guys that, you know, sometimes I get a lot more credit than I'm due, because I just do these buildings that have a distinct look or whatever. But there's guys who build thousands of apartments all over the country that, you know, do infinitely more than I do. But, you know, I like the creative. I'm good with numbers, and, you know, I can hold my own in business with most people. And so, you know, I just kind of follow my own path. Right now, London House on San Felipe is in River Oaks. There's 24 units and 18 are sold, and I'll be finished in 6 months. So that's going in the right direction. And now I'm trying to develop what's called Chaucer and Rice Village next to Hungry's, which would be a 30 unit. And again, I'm on the pre-sale, gamble my money phase. And so, you know, I'm doing it again. And if I find an A-plus site, I'll crank it up again. But unless it's an A-plus site, I'm not doing it. And I'm not going to do really big buildings, because I've run out of patience waiting 4.5 years to get paid.
Yeah, right.
A long time to wait to get real money.
So no apartment management or any sort of building management that you used to have all this experience in, and I guess it was kind of nice in the sense that it kept the lights on, the bills paid, and the cash flowing. And what you do now is a lot more chunky, right? But
I am getting ready to do an apartment project.
Oh, you are going to? Okay, good. Okay.
At exactly the time when most people aren't going to do it. Next to Brenner's on the Bayou. Oh,
I know. Okay, great. That's a good place.
225 unit apartment project. Okay. So.
Well, we'll conclude, but I want to first just thank you here on camera, and on behalf of our audience, thank you, Randall. I've known of you a long time. I had the pleasure of meeting you not all that long ago, and you've been so kind with your time to come here and share about your journey, your story, and how you've been a successful developer in this town. And it's really been a joy to see. I never knew you, but I see all these buildings, and now I kind of get to sit with you. So it's an honor to be here, asking and hearing about your story. It's one of the best parts of my job. So thank you again. You couldn't be kinder, couldn't be nicer.
Thank you.
And very generous. So thank you again.
I'm very happy you got married in the Rice Ballroom. It's a wonderful place.
It was good luck, because I'm still happily married.
Good for you. I haven't had such luck with marriages.
Well, thank you again, Randall. Appreciate your time.